my name is Matt and this is my new logo. Welcome to the 9th part of the episode of the series when I show you how to create an RPG game. Today we will continue our customizable input creation, and before we go to our main topic, which is GUI, let me quickly show you what we already have. In the last session we've created an empty game object called Game Manager, and we've attached some really big script to it. Ignore all, I guess. And as you see, I'm using Microsoft Visual Studio because Mono developed just crashed too many times, and I decided to change what I use. But you can use whatever you want. One and only difference is that when I enter a function name and I enter the brackets, the Microsoft Visual Studio automatically puts this enter line, but I do not find it really troubling. Anyway, we've created a game object with a component called Input Manager. We've created a public list containing some buttons, and buttons are custom class objects, like here, serialized into this list. So again, really fast review. Classes are containers for variables and methods, and when serializing them, we're just turning them into some kind of objects. And here we have a list of these objects. You can see the type is button, and because it's public, we've created all these values in an inspector here, and then we've changed our input over here. And this line, I should really explain this more deep, so I do it now. This reference, meaning that we are referencing a component which is a script with this class, this very class, which is attached to some game object because it's mono behavior. And so from other game objects, from other scripts, we just want to reference this very instance of this script, because it contains a list that remembers which buttons does which. And in an awake, we are making it equal game object that find game manager. It basically finds here in a hierarchy game object called game manager, and then we are getting a component called input manager. So we are just getting this script, and if we do so here, let me close this. In every script that need to reference to some input reference, we can now access every public variables in this script by just pressing IM, which is this name, that, and we can access public methods and variables. Okay, so I think now everything is clear for you. If not, go ahead and ask. What's that? It's probably because of previous run. Well, I've got no errors in Unity anyway. So let's go and start creating some GUI for that. Because now everything works. For example, I use alpha 1, which is this, which is defined here, to use my sort, and I can manually change that to alpha 2, for example. And now alpha 1 doesn't work because we need to use alpha 2 numeric button. The problem is we don't really want to assign them in an inspector because we have this already. We want to assign them in a game, and that's what we cannot achieve using Input Manager. That's why we created all of this stuff. in the previous session. Now let's go to GUI creation. To create your GUI, first you need a canvas. But when we right click on the hierarchy with right mouse button and we select any of UI elements, canvas will add automatically. So I will add a panel, and you see I've got a panel, but I also got a canvas. So let's go to the canvas first. First thing we need to change is this canvas scalar component, which I always make scale with screen size, because then it scales my GUI much properly. I also make this slider in the middle of width and height, and you should always make this your screen. Oh, I don't have that resolution, 190/20 or 180. Make this your screen resolution as a reference. I need actually a game view, and I will make it 69 because that's my screen resolution. Now you see some things do not really work cool, and maybe it does. Let's move it here. Now panel fills all the screen. I don't really want it, but first I will call the canvas pose menu canvas, but actually for now our pause menu will be just key assignments menu. And I will grab this, I will click panel, make sure it's selected, grab one side, press Alt to scale it at the both sides at once, and make it like this. And I also gonna take this and move it like here. If you cannot do it, you've got like something like this, make sure this icon is selected, which makes you able of moving your GUI stuff. And you can activate this mode by pressing T on a keyboard. And by the way, you can press Q, W, E, or T to activate those tools. You no need to click them. Okay, so those white arrows, I think, are an icons, and it just shows GUI elements, how should they be scaled. We won't really go through that very deep because there are other tutorials covering that. I just want to make our key assignments menu really fast. Okay, now let's add let's add some buttons. So I will create another panel, call it button, and I will scale it like this and like this, and I will move it to top, and when holding shift I can just move it in one axis, which is very cool. I don't really this to touch top, so I will move it like here, and let's see, something like that satisfies me. And I think it's also worth to change the color of this panel, so I will create this panel and I will call it background. And I will make this color dark, and I will decrease an alpha level to make this fading the screen. And I also want my button to be a little bit darker, just like that. I will make it completely disappear, I think, later, but for now just leave it like this. So our button, oh, let's call it just button field will have three things in it. Two buttons. So I will add button 2 times, because when I just duplicate one, I've got some weird problems then. And one text. GUI text, of course, not 3D object text. 3D text, I need GUI text. At first I will grab GUI text and move it to the left. And as you see, when I move it to top left corner of a background, button background, it highlights green. So I will move it like this, and then I will go here to my text menu in an inspector. And if you use your own fonts, there's no problem with it. I will just use an Arial. I will increase the font size, make sure it's centered, make its color to white, and actually it's too big, I think, and I will make it key name, because we will make this value via scripts, and I will just move it like here. We don't really want it to be for here in C view. We'll just have a representation, so I usually use caps lock and name them like that. It doesn't really matter actually. So this is the text, and I will also call it button name. And here, actually I will make button fields with small letter, because everything here is small letter. And here I will make this button, put it over here, scale it, let's say like this, or just make them round, and I will call this button alternative, because it contains information about alternative button. And I will make this text alternative button with caps lock, of course. Now make sure it's black actually, and I will just increase the font. And like make this auto button, because button names aren't that long, I guess. So make this button same size, and you can find your size over here, width and height. Move it next to this first button. Take this text, make it the same size, which is 33. Make color black and call it posit button. So here I've got button name, key name actually, two buttons indicated. One is positive and one is negative. And I could and we'll make it that I can click this and get an information called press any key, and I will press something and it will appear here. I hope by the end of this video actually. Okay, so now I will make sure here in both cases the Z position is -1, and with some reason when position is -1, or I will show you -100, it's in front of the GUI stuff, and I will just make sure it's in front of everything, because if it's behind something we couldn't really click this. So to avoid some debugging and stuff. I just make sure it's in front of everything. So this is our button field, and now do I have a tag UI? No, I usually add a tag called UI. I've forgotten about that, and make sure everything is tagged as UI. It's UI element, just because it makes searching and stuff faster than in a later stage of game development. Okay, so now with this button field, I will click here and make sure that anchor is in the top. And when pressing this very, and make sure you don't hold out, because if you do, it will move our button field to the anchor. And I will show you what it does in a minute. What this does in a minute. Now in the script to take this button field, make many copies, and as many copies as we have elements here in this list, which is 8, and make every of them, the name of every of them would be the name of every button, and we will assign button positive and alternative. So now we will just care about displaying all of this here in a game. But before I will just, let's unclick 2D. I will just show you how does it look in a game. It scales not the best, but okay for now. It's actually scales really good. Because it's buttons, because it's button, I can click this. You see, it's becoming darker, but nothing's really happening for now, because nothing was set to happening, and it's nothing, it's just the GUI. Okay, so now we will create our script. To start, here in our scripts folder, I will create a C# script, and I'll call it key a segment menu. I will drag and drop it over my button background, which, if you don't remember, is this whole black plane. And I will edit it, and as you see, I'm using Microsoft Visual Studio because MonoDevelop decided to crash and it didn't get up. Okay, so here we need some references at first, as usually. We need game object called Buttonframe, and of course we need it to make it public. For now, our button frame will be this guy. This panel and all those things being parented to it. And we also need a list, so we use system.collections.generic. And if you don't remember what lists are, they are just containers like arrays. We used list in a previous video. This list was containing buttons. Our list will contain game objects. I will call just buttons. Your list of game object, two parentheses, meaning that I'm using constructor, and I don't really want it to be public because we'll just keep it as a reference. It will make us easier, but if you really want, you need it, make it public, come on, nothing will happen, really. So, first, as always, we need reference to our input manager because we need to know what this list of buttons contains. So, how we do it? Should I copy? Okay, I will copy it because I have already told about it. But again, input manager IM is reference to any instance of this class, and we are getting instance that belongs, which is instance that is component that belongs to game object called game manager, and we are finding it in a scene in awake function. Okay, so now we will jump into start function, which is called what's this particle which is called after an awake function, and we need to fill our list of game object instances of our button frames. But before, let me go here into our button field, which is basically our button frame over here, and okay, maybe I will do it later. So there are two ways. We can use for each loop, or we can use for loop, and we will use for loop because I guess I will use for each loop very often, and for loop is also worth to show you. So let's start with for loop. So I will type for int I equals 0. I is less than input manager that game buttons, this is list, that count, which remembers how much element is in list. So this will return 8 because our size of this list is 8. And now we need to say what happening after every iteration with this value. And I will increment this by 1, so I can type I equals I plus 1. And easier way to do it is just type I plus plus or plus plus I. So in first iteration our I will be 0, in second it will be 1, 2, and we will do it forever, since we actually not forever, but we will do it and we will stop when I reaches this value, because when it reaches this value it's not smaller, so we will stop loop. And now, as you remember or you don't, we can access every single element of the list using square parentheses. So when I type input manager game buttons and I type square parentheses, this is reference to first element, second, third, etc. And when I press I, it's referencing element of the I value, and because I goes through all elements in the list, we will get all elements. But for now, we will just add to our button list, so buttons that add game object called Buttonframe. And it will add Buttonframe as many times as we have elements in this list. So I will make this list public just to show you that it works. Public list, and as you see right over here, when we enter play mode, we've got 8 elements from 0 to 7, and everything is just button field. Okay. Now we need some instances in this element, which is in our button field, button frame, or whatever you name it. So I will create another C# script and call it assignment button, because it's button controller, and I will drag and drop it here. Whoops. I will edit the script. I will remove all this stuff, and I will remove system.collections. And for now, I will have just 3 public references. I will reference to this guy. Oh, what happened to the text actually? It's weird. Okay, I don't know what it was. Anyway, to this text, which is the name of the key, to name of the alternative, but the text, not the button really, and the second one, and now I just realized I didn't name this button, so primary. I said positive button, it should be primary. Primary. Okay, so to make, because now if you just play public text, you don't have anything like this here. Text asset is not what we want really. To access them, we need another namespace. Those namespaces are called Unity Engine that UI. And now we've got the text, which is just a text, which is part of the UI. And we need 3 texts. First is button name, as I said. Second is primary key, I will take. And third is alternative native key. Okay. Now they should appear here, but because of some reasons they don't really. I wonder why. Oh, actually, what's happening? Let me actually check, is it working really? It doesn't. That's a strange thing. Should I close it? I don't know. Okay, now we. Anyway, so here I will drag and drop alternative key into alternative primary, but I remember I'm dropping the text only, not the buttons, and button name into button name. And I need to access them by another script. So what? Okay. So now, after adding a button, I can access it. I will just button open square brackets I close square brackets that get component, and the type of the component is actually the class. I will show you what we are doing in a minute. That, and it should be like this, that button name, I can access those. So I'll name it the same as input manager, that game button of I that button name. Button name that text. Okay, so it's probably complicated to you, so I will leave it and move it Unity over here. So now you can see both of them. But first, let me show you what's happening in the first in play mode. So we've got something. We've got sort, and what it does, I will show you in a minute. Here, for example, in our function, we've got many buttons. They are referencing the same actually, but whatever. We'll change it, but all of them has assigned different name, and the name comes from this list. And what's happening for each button stored here in this list, okay, for each button stored in this list, we add we add game object, which is just button field, to our button list. Then we access, and button frame is just this guy, and it has component called key assignment button, parented to itself. Oh my god, what I just said. I'm tired. As its component and parented to itself. Forget it. We need to reference those components. So like this text, and this text. So we taking component of each button frame over here, and the component is this guy, key assignment button. Then we access public variable called button name, and we don't really access this component called UI text, but just this area, the text which is displayed, and we can name it whatever we want. It just must be string. So we access again this array, and we access button name, which is a string. But to make it better, we need to instantiate every button. So instead of just passing this guy, we'll type game object, capital G, because we need a class. So it's referencing to the game object class that instantiate, and now we'll take the object and I will show you in a minute, and we will need Buttonframe object. And what it does, it takes Buttonframe object, which is just reference, makes a clone of it, and adds it to a button list. And after going through, and after adding 8 buttons, 8 because we've got here 8 buttons, we can add one more and we will make 9. We could have 9 and we don't need to change anything because we get the size of this list over here. And after going through this list, we don't really need this anymore on the scene. So we type game object that destroy. Do not use destroy immediate. It makes bugs and it really works really strange. Just use destroy. And we will type Buttonframe. So after creating 8 copies of this guy, just delete it. Whoops. Okay. Let's play the game, see what it does. So, as you see, now we do not have nothing because we've deleted our button frame. You see, reference is missing, but if you come closer in a hierarchy, we've got 8 buttons, which are not displayed properly because they aren't parent of any canvas. We can fix that. The easiest way is to just make some game object, and I will call this TMP, temporary, because we will just need it for a moment. I will make TMP equals game object that instantiate. So now we've got game object called TMP. TMP that transform that set parent, and I will type this game object. Okay, that transform. Now it goes, and I will also buttons that add TMP. Again, some messy coding, so I will do the same what I've done before. Actually, I did some mistakes because nothing's really happening. Why is that? Okay, now it works. We do not need this. It was my mistake. Anyway, forgive me, please. So, what we do? Now they are on display anyway, but as you see, they are part of the canvas and they are over here. At least you can see them. So what we do? For each button that we've predefined, we are creating a copy of a button frame, which was created before. We call it TMP and we set it transform to be a parent of our canvas. It's like dragging and drop it here, making parent and making the transform some else transform, and then we add it to our button list, which shouldn't really be public, it's just for being seen. Another thing that we can do is make TMP, which is game object, remember that name, because every game object is a name, it's basically this field. And okay, let me equals, and I will copy this because, as you remember, this is the name of our button. So the one and only difference now is those are named properly. I mean, forward is forward, and if I take forward, it has also forward name, and we can, for example, add it because we may add strings. So let's type underscore button. Now let's go. You see forward button, backward button. Very cool. What else we can do? We can reference other. I will leave it like this. Instead of button name, we will make alternative key that text equals input manager that game buttons of I that alternative, which is key code, and we need just the name of its key code, so we will type that to string. And I will copy this primary key, primary that to string, and I will show you what it does. So now basically we've just added some new cool features. So I will take forward, move it a little bit. As you can see, first button is called W and second is up arrow. And what we've done, we've just referenced not just button name but two others. This is reference to primary, this very text which displays W right now. This one is reference to alternative, which displays now up arrow. And as you see, when we've got multiple copies of some game object, every reference is being saved properly. I mean, backward is S and down arrow S, etc., etc. It's very cool, but we still got those here, and they shouldn't be here, they should be over here. And I've opened up our player, so we've got messy in our... I've opened everything. Anyway, why is that? If you click one of these, you see scale is set to 2, and if you hit our button field, our scale is set to 1. I don't know why is that happening, but I know how we fix that. We need to copy those values which are stored in rect transform component and assign them to each new button that we create in our start function. Nothing simpler. We just need to private rect transform. We just need rect transform. I will make button frame rect transform and tmp.rect transform, and so that I know which one is which. And button frame.rect transfer we will just assign here in awake function by using get component. Button frame rect transform that equals get component rect transform. Don't forget about parentheses. And we will do the same for TMP rect transform, but we will do it each time we initialize one. And it's nothing wrong by using get component here multiple times, because it's still initialization. We just cannot use it in update function. And remember that it's slow and power consuming. I'm sorry. And to do so, we will make tmp.rect transform equals get component tmp.get component rect transform. Now let's assign some variables. Because they are components, you cannot just type tmp rect transform equals some other rect transform, because it won't work. So we just need tmp rect transform that uncorded position, which is vector 2, I think, equals bf rect transform that uncorded position. And I also want to change the scale, tmp rect transform that local scale equals bf.rect transform that local scale. So now, after creating every object, we take its rect transform and assign some values, same as we have here in our base frame button. Let's try this. It works okay. The one and only problem that we have is that they are stuck one of each other. Actually, I think we should first make the scale, then the position. Oh, actually, it does not make any difference. I don't know why, really. As you can see, there are some values. They are changed somehow here. That's here because we need to type Buttonframe that get component. And let me explain why. When we just type get component with any other game object before it, we are taking the component of the game object that this script is assigned to. So here our menu script is assigned to this background, and this background is this anchored position. And when we type the Buttonframe, we assign here and we take this rect transform, and this is the rect transform that will have any other button that we create. Now they are placed okay, but still one of top of each other. How do we fix that? We will add some Y position. So again, tmp rect transform that uncorded position plus equals new vector 2. Vector 2 contains two information, an x-axis and y-axis. We don't want to move it in x-axis, so we'll make 0. And for y-axis, we need the height of this guy, this value. So we need to make bf rect transform that rect, I guess, that height, and we will multiply it that with I. Why do we? Because I changes every time we create one. So first our I is 0, so forward we do not move it, because when I is 0, all of this is 0, and we add new vector 2 which is 0 0, so we do not add everything. And then we add high of this one time, which is, you know, like here, then 2 times, then 3 times, and we keep multiplying this. And as you can see, the one and only problem is we are doing it, we just got out of the screen, so we need to multiply this by minus I. And why minus I? Because our anchored is here, so up is there and down is here. That's why I told you to put an anchor over here on the top of the panel. Now it's working properly. You see the name of the buttons and the buttons. And for example, imagine that now I think that I should create one more button. I will call it, I don't know, pause. Just make sure the name is different. And first is escape. The second one is pause. And now if you play the game, we see our button is still here. That's because we wrote this GUI very efficiently and very smart. And when we, for example, see this in action and we think, I want them to be left, not centered. I go here, find button name, and change it to be left. That's all. And for example, when I think, it's too right, I should move it to the left, I can just do it. Come on, now it looks like this, and it's even better, I think. Or if you think those buttons are too far for each other, let's move them like this. No problem. Even more, no problem. That's because we are working on one instance and we are copying it on the start of the game. That concludes this video. I haven't done as much as I wanted to do, but at least I know I've covered many things very deep. But if you have any questions, just come on and ask. I write answers as always as I can. I usually check for any questions. In the next session we will continue doing the GUI stuff. We'll make it interactable so that we can change the buttons in a game view. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching and bye.